Thank you all members for having us here today and the opportunity to present on this study and share with you where we are and where we're going. So here's just a brief agenda. We're going to spend a short while on the up end, and then we're going to spend more time on the end where we're talking about potential improvements to 10th Street so we can gain your feedback and see if you approve of the direction that we're going or if you'd like any changes there. So what is the 10th Street study? We're looking at the entire length of the corridor from 192 all the way to Narcoossee. It ends up being about 4 miles. And the approach we're taking is what we call a complete street study approach. And this means that we're looking to improve the road and make sure that we can balance all users who are using the road, particularly prioritizing the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists while also making sure that traffic can still flow smoothly through the corridor. One thing we want to say up front is the approach for this study is not to take any new right-of-way. We would work within what's already out there, and there's no plans for taking any properties along the corridor or anything like that. Public involvement is a huge part of this study. We have a lot of different touch points with the citizens throughout the study. There are 4 specific outreach events, and we also have other methods of communication, which are through surveys. We did this survey last year in the summertime, asking people how they use 10th Street. Are you visiting businesses? Are you driving through? Are you doing both? And what do you see that could be improved on 10th Street? Some of the main feedback that we got is to reduce speeding, have a safe place to ride a bike, and close the gaps in the sidewalk. Right now there are some sidewalks, but it isn't easy to get throughout the entire length of 10th Street due to the gaps there. Sometimes you have to walk on the grass. And now we have a second survey that's currently open. This one is more geared toward the alternatives that we're presenting, and that we'll show you a little bit later. Generally, the feedback has been positive. We've also got some areas of improvement where citizens would like to see additional intersections looked at, which we'll continue to explore. And just to touch on some of the background research we did, we have a larger study online that's about 50 pages or so, but I did want to highlight some of the key points because this data informs the solutions that we're presenting, as we want everything to be informed by the data and make sure that we're proposing solutions that are going to actually solve problems. This here is a crash map. The top map you see has numbered 1 through 7 for locations where people walking or on bicycles have been involved in crashes. The bottom one is an overall crash map, so it shows you people biking, people walking, but also motor vehicle crashes. The red points are the hot spots. We've identified a couple locations such as Columbia Ave on the west end, and we do notice that you all have put in a stop sign since we started this study. Michigan Avenue and Orange Avenue. So you'll start to see some of these intersection solutions for these locations later on in the presentation. We looked at the vehicle speeds on the corridor. This was collected by the city last year, and where we found the highest speeds were by 0.3 around Eastern and Mississippi, where the roadway starts to feel wider as you approach Narcoossee. There's a lot more green space, and it feels that vehicles can travel a little bit faster. So that's one location where we're going to be looking to reduce the speeds to make sure that it's safe for people to travel. The proposed speed limit for this entire corridor is 25 miles an hour. And we're also keeping in mind the trail and bike connections. We know there are some great ones around the city already, and we want to make sure that anything proposed for 10th Street can seamlessly integrate into those. The potential improvements, here's where we want to spend the most time. We have 2 different types of improvements. One is for the road of 10th Street and one is for the intersection. So first we'll go over the road improvements, which include sidewalks and everything to the left and the right of the road. We divided the corridor into these 5 areas that you see, and this is because they're all a little bit different. They have, you see in the downtown and the dark orange, that's where more of your businesses are or future businesses are going to be. And the other areas are more residential. This first segment, which we're calling the medical arts in blue and the historic grid is in orange, what's out there today is shown on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. A potential improvement is shown on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. The main improvement is you'll see a shared use path on the far right side of the screen, which would have enough room for 2 bicycles to pass side by side. You'll also notice that there's a sidewalk on the left side, which would continue the whole way and close those gaps that we got some feedback on that people would like to see covered. With the trail, there are some limitations. We know there are very large power poles on one side of the road. The trail may need to be narrowed in some of these locations, going from 10 feet to 8 feet, possibly to a sidewalk in some very constrained sections. But we're under the assumption that we would not move those power poles due to cost concern and constructability. Moving into what we're calling the historic core in this dark orange, it's very similar to the slide we just saw, except we're proposing parking in some of these areas. We do know there's a parking garage planned for downtown. This isn't intended to be a substitute, more of a supplement to that, as some businesses start growing outside of the main downtown core. And here there will be streetscape and lighting for people to be walking on the side of the road, see where they're going. The downtown core, we know there are current plans for this. They're in the 90% design phase. And we're not proposing anything new here on the right. This is what's already proposed. It's just a reminder that we do intend to make sure that anything new proposed for 10th Street will tie in nicely with this. And this last section is what we're calling the suburban transition as you get closer to Narcoossee. This is where there is the widest right-of-way. Prior to here, we had about 50 feet. This here is about 80 feet. So you'll notice that the trail and the sidewalk are a little bit further from the road. The further you can get people and bikes away, the safer they can be. Same solution here, although the trail, shared use path, may need to switch sides. We would prefer it to be on the north side where you could be along the subdivision walls and there are less driveway conflicts, so that when cars are coming out, there's less likely of a chance that they could hit a bicyclist or a pedestrian. And same thing here, you'd have a nice area for landscaping in between the road and the trail or sidewalk. And here's a potential intersection ideas that we have. We have a lot of ideas on this slide, so I'll kind of break them down one by one. And first I wanted to note why we selected certain intersections for improvements. That was based on the crash history, or if the intersection had a signal on 192. So those are locations where you get a lot of traffic coming in, and any traffic entering St. Cloud want to make sure it's at an appropriate speed and transitions into the area, keeping everyone safe. So starting on the right side of the screen, we'll talk about the mini roundabouts in that green area. Roundabouts have been proven to reduce injury severity if crashes do occur because cars are traveling at lower speeds. So instead of a T-bone crash potentially resulting in a very serious injury, it might just be a rear-end crash at 10 or 15 miles an hour. These are placed strategically at interim locations along that segment so that vehicles can maintain the same speed throughout. Next, what we have called painted or raised intersections. These are visual cues as drivers start to enter the downtown that this is a new area, that there's going to be more activity to be aware of. Raised intersections are not speed bumps, but you could say they're similar. They're a speed bump through the entire intersection. So you go up on one end and then you come down on the other end. Painted intersections like you see on that image there. And pedestrian median refuges, we would like to include these at any location possible because it allows people to cross one side of the road at a time and be able to wait in that center area in case a car is coming from the other direction. It is going to be limited because of the tight space we have to work within, but that's something we would like to look at throughout the road. A rapid rectangular flashing beacons, that's proposed right across from the school location to improve safety. And the last location we have is Columbia, where the new four-way stop is. We had originally thought a traffic circle could work there, but if the city's happy with the four-way stop, again, these are just ideas and it's a starting point. All right, so that was what we had to share with you today, and here's a look at where we're going through the end of the study. We have 2 more outreach events, one being at the end of this month, at the St. Cloud Monthly Market, and one being in April. And again, on that outreach schedule we had up front, we would like to continue having touch points with the city and with agencies to make sure that we can get consensus on this and make sure everyone's happy with what comes out of the study. Thank you, and we'll take any questions now.
Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask you next steps, which I see your next steps for the study, but is there funding for design and construction?
So as it relates to kind of the next project development steps, we are in what's considered a planning study, concept development. If this were to go through, so there's a couple routes for funding. If it were to enter the federal or state funding route, we're looking at a little, some time, just given the amount of priorities and the finite amount of funds that we have. So this project is eligible for Metro Plan Orlando's federal funds for complete streets. I will say, though, if this project would enter that prioritized project list, it may be 10+ years to see that project to fruition. There is another funding program with federal funds. We call it our Off-System Construction Assistance Program. And that program's new. We just adopted it as part of our most recent 2045 plan. And what that does is it incentivizes municipalities to advance the preliminary phases, design, any environmental drainage work, and then this competitive program would then be eligible for a city to fund the construction of the project. And then, of course, there is, discretionary grant opportunities. I know those are just that, discretionary. And then there's the local funding option as well, whether that's county or city funded. So there's a few different paths. Each have their own set of, advantages and disadvantages and timelines. But there is the latter phases of this work are currently unfunded.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of point that out to council. Like, this is basically just an idea. This is an ideas, they're coming up with sections and things like that. So if this is something we want to move forward with, then we need to kind of talk about strategies to fund it. And in my experience, money comes to plans. So if we were going to do something, I would say, push forward the design, because when money does come available, money comes to plans. So that was my comment. Thanks.
Do we have any other comments or questions from council? Thank you very much. We certainly would like to move forward as quickly as we can with improving that part of our city for sure. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.